The Georgia Bulldogs are undefeated. They are 6-0, the number one team in the country. But like a lot of other college football programs right now, they're a little dinged up. But fortunately, they've got Vanderbilt this week. They're going to steamroll through the Commodores. They have a much-needed bye week the week after that before heading down to Jacksonville to play the Gators. Kirby Smart spoke with the media, other reporters on Tuesday, and talked about the injury update a little bit, who's out, who might play against Vanderbilt, who won't play against Vanderbilt. And he said he started off with A.D. Mitchell, who hasn't really been able to contribute since the opening weekend against Oregon. He was dinged up, I believe, the first series or two against Samford, and we really haven't seen a ton of them since. Now, they don't need him against Vanderbilt, but eventually you need A.D. Mitchell out there just so you can get more cohesiveness, more chemistry in the passing game. And down the stretch against Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky, they're going to need A.D. Mitchell because the receivers just have to step up. And right now, he's their number one guy. Kirby said about A.D. Mitchell. A.D. has looked better, but he probably hasn't. He hasn't probably looked as good as I thought he did in pregame last week. So it looks like he's taken maybe a small step backwards. Not great news. I really thought he looked good in pregame and hasn't quite been to that mark. I don't know if it was the adrenaline or the rush. I thought he looked pretty good in pregame, talking about the Auburn game, and thought we might be able to use him more, but it didn't work out. He didn't really tweak it again, but he's not 100%. He's been very similar this week as he was last week. So not the best update that you're looking for out of your, you can call him a star receiver, right? What he did against Alabama, one of the biggest catches in program history. I think you could call him a star receiver, and I don't think we're going to see him against Vanderbilt. Talking about Jalen Carter, arguably the best player on the team, one of the best defenders in college football. Obviously had a dirty block on him. It was a dirty play against Missouri. They went after him, tried to take him out of the game, and they did. He said, Jalen is still not practicing with us. He's not taking reps or anything. He's rehabbing. That's not what you want to hear from your star defender. Again, they're going to blow out Vanderbilt probably by 30, 40 points without Jalen Carter and without A.D. Mitchell, but you want him back for Jacksonville. So these guys have basically the rest of this week, all next week, and then the week in preparation for Florida to get healthy. So a solid 2.5 weeks before they need to be as healthy as possible. Where do you say? Tresman Marshall, the linebacker, did not play last week against Auburn. Tresman warms up, gets loose. He looked much better today. Tuesday, he's been able to practice and take some reps. Small Munden, another guy who was out last week against Auburn, he's been very similar to last week. Kendall Milton, running back who injured his groin against Auburn. He said Kendall Milton has not practiced yet. He's been out there with us. I would say he's probably probable, but I don't know if he's going to be able to play or not. Now, they need Kendall Milton to play. Of course, they can beat Vanderbilt solidly without Kendall Milton, but this is not Todd Gurley, DeAndre Swift, Nick Chubb, where it's like, okay, he's very, very good, but let's not play him so he doesn't get injured. Kendall Milton needs to play. He needs to get better. And I don't know. The other backs have been solid, especially the last couple of weeks. We're talking about Daijun Edwards and Branson Robinson. But Kendall Milton's a guy who needs to stay out there. He's, if it's not one thing, it's another. So his whole kind of career, it's been a little nagging injury here, something that keeps him out a few weeks here, a lot of different stuff. Right now it's a groin. And while he probably doesn't need to play, they don't need him out there. The other three are, just fine, very reliable and dependable. But eventually Kendall Milton has to get out there and stay healthy. So quite a few guys dinged up. But again, you don't need them until Florida, but you need a healthy Jalen Carter against Tennessee and against Mississippi State on the road. If you want to affect Will Rogers, you have to get after him. And the best way to do that is to have a healthy Jalen Carter there, because the other guys around him, it frees them up to be in one-on-one situations to where it makes it easier for them to get after the quarterback. So quick injury update from Kirby Smart there. He was also asked about what his team identity is. We're halfway through the season, or almost halfway through the season right now. So you need to kind of know what your team's identity is and what they're built of. He said probably grit and toughness. The way they practice, I really like it. They're really a unique, connected group, a little different than last year's group. Last year's group feels like they had been around longer, because they were. this group has created a little bit of an identity of how they care for each other, but also the grit and toughness they play with. Grit, toughness, physicality, those are football terms that Kirby Smart wants to drill over and over into his team. That's what he wants his program to be built of. So that was kind of an answer that I think we all expected. He talked a little bit about Dan Jackson. Said he was a talented athlete coming in. He could run. He popped off to us when he ran his 40. He was one of the faster guys. Didn't know much about our defense, so it took a full season of scout work, learning, playing on special teams, and then he started to contribute more. And he's created a role for himself as a really good special teams player, and of course in the secondary as well. Talked about Ryan Davis, a guy who I saw play live in high school when his team in Florida came up to play at Milton High School. He was really good on a very talented defense in high school, and he was the guy who stood out the most to me. I knew once he was able to get healthy that he could make some plays, and he made some against Auburn. Kirby said he's a core special teams guy. He practices hard. He played behind those other guys last year. If you were a fly on the wall in that room, you know that talent just oozed, and he was blessed to be with those three guys that left and watched how they worked in practice and how he was part of that too. He also had a very significant injury last year that prevented him from being able to contribute in other areas and special teams, and this year he's been able to do that, and he got his opportunity Saturday, and he made the most of it. He talked about recruits coming in, how, to manage his time as it relates to practicing, getting their heads right for the game that day while hosting recruits. He spoke about that in the story that we have over there. And like I mentioned in my recruiting story, there's a lot going on behind the scenes on the recruiting trail, and I do expect at least one or two guys to pop within the week. So make sure you stay tuned to that. Someone asked him what number 16 meant to him. He's like, I don't care. They just gave it to me. He said, if I'm recruiting a kid who wants a number badly and would possibly look somewhere else in order to get that number, he's like, we don't want those kids in our program. So I don't know who asked him that, but he was like, I don't care. It's a number. I don't care about that, which is kind of funny. On Kamari Lassiter, he said Kamari's a really tough competitor, great leader, great kid. A lot of guys have asked about Kamari Lassiter this year. The new starting cornerback who played a little bit last year, but everyone knows about Keely Ringo, and he's got to get better too. But Kamari is a guy who I think, teams might come after him later in the season. Mississippi State throws the ball a lot. They're going to test Kamari Lassiter. Hendon Hooker, Tennessee, they're going to test Kamari Lassiter. Anthony Richardson, great athlete. Still don't think he could play quarterback, but when he does have to throw the ball, he's probably going to look Kamari Lassiter's way. Again, Keely Ringo still has to get better too. It's not a perfect defense. I think they're playing well collectively, but they're going to be tested for sure. Anthony Richardson is an explosive guy. If they can corral him and make him throw the ball, they're going to win that game going away. But if he starts scrambling, taking off for some big runs, making plays out of the pocket, which is going to help him in the passing game a little bit, then they might have a little trouble with the Gators. But eventually, the defense has to continue to play better and better and better, and they need these guys healthy. Jalen Carter makes this defense completely different. He's a guy that they definitely need back. He talks about Oscar Delp a little bit, a guy y'all know all about because I told you about him. Feels like years ago now. He made a couple catches against Auburn. Of course, those quotes are over on Dog Post. He talked about the development of the wide receivers and the challenges they face. He was like, challenges or opportunities? There's something about playing receiver that you really need to do in a game to get the utmost confidence. Dylan Bell probably has a little bit more of that to nylon. He's played more than most freshmen, but still not a lot. CJ Smith, a speedster that they have, true freshman, has come along really well, but hasn't had a ton of opportunities. Those guys are getting a lot of reps and getting better in practice, but it's hard to gain the confidence and experience you need until you get live game reps, and those guys have not gotten a ton. So just a few things that Kirby spoke about. He talked more about Ryan Davis in the story and to the media on how he feels about the team being viewed as a contender this year after the roster turnover. He said, I wouldn't have cared because I don't trust the source, so I really don't care. So he doesn't care what they're ranked or who's viewing them as a championship contender or not. He's just out there coaching, trying to make this team the best they can. Right now, they are the number one team in the country, and they're going to be the number one team in the country when they take on the Gators in Jacksonville, unless something crazy happens. Ohio State just wins these next 2 weeks by 50 points. Maybe they jump Georgia, but Georgia's going to roll against Vanderbilt. Then they have the off week, and I expect them to go into Gainesville being number 1. And then they've got Tennessee the week after that. So they got Florida on October 29th, of course, Halloween weekend. Then Tennessee at home November 5th. I think the East is going to come down to that game. If not, if Georgia beats Tennessee, they're going to have to, I think, just win one of the next 2 against Mississippi State or Kentucky. But Tennessee at home, at Mississippi State the next week, at Kentucky the next week, and then you get a high school team basically in Georgia Tech, get to blow their brains out to end the regular season. So it's going to be a tough little stretch down the road. Need to get healthy, need A.D. Mitchell back, need Jalen Carter back. You'd like your starting linebackers to be healthy. But I think they can get it done, and should be a fun rest of the season. But make sure you stay with us for Vanderbilt coverage. And again, a lot of recruiting stuff coming on behind the scenes, so make sure you stick around for that. So guys, thanks for watching this video. As always, stay tuned to the next one coming up right now, and I will see you over on Dog Post.